Since the Save Our Seas Foundation was founded more than 20 years ago, there's been tremendous strides in progress for shark conservation all around the world. There's been huge victories in international legislation protecting their trade. There's been massive growth in protected areas being created sort of just for sharks. There's an ever-growing community of advocates and passionate people that are dedicated to really trying to make sure that there is this difference being made for sharks and rays, and I'm hugely optimistic for the next 20 years and beyond, where I really believe that this growing global community can bend the curve, as it were, as one of decline for these populations back into recovery.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Save Our Seas Foundation Distinguished Speaker Series. We're so happy to have you all here for this year's finale. We've done 12 of these over the course of this year, and we're excited to wrap up this season's series with a great speaker. Maybe the little intro video gave you a hint as to what tonight's topic is going to be about whales and all the amazingness that they do. Again, welcome. My name is Lance. I am the host for tonight. I'm from the Museum of Discovery and Science in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. There, I'm the Director of Environmental Sustainability. We do a lot here at the museum to welcome guests and to engage guests in topics all about sustainability and resilience. Our mission at the museum, if you ever find yourself in Fort Lauderdale, come on in. Our mission is to connect people to inspiring science. So we do this through 4 different topics: through physical science education, early childhood education, health and wellness education, and tonight, like I said, environmental sustainability. So like I said, if you ever find yourself in Fort Lauderdale, please come on in and check us out, all right? A few little things before we get started. If you have any questions for our speaker tonight, please put them into the chat. We want some back and forth and conversation to be happening. So if you have any burning questions, you can type them into the chat and I'll ask them on your behalf. There will be a question and answer session in the end of the presentation. So if you'd like to wait to the end too, that's also fine. But you can have your questions there, all right? And yeah, without further ado, let's welcome our speaker tonight, Miss Janie Wray. So Janie Wray is our CEO and lead researcher for BC Whales, responsible for some of that wonderful footage we just saw. And has studied the acoustic traditions and culture of whale behavior for the last 24 years. She is the founder of the North Coast Cetacean Society, BC Whales, and the Finn Island Marine Institute, and recently became the science director for Orca Lab. Congratulations on that. She is devoted to the protection of whales and their precious habitat needs, along with the coast of British Columbia. So, Janie, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Lance. That's wonderful. Thank you. Okay, well, I'll just get my presentation going, and thank you, everybody, for being here. This is wonderful, and as you'll note quite quickly, I love talking about whales. So with that, I'll get this.
We love learning about whales, so it's perfect.
Good, good. And I've got my share sound on. And this will just take me a second. All right. So does that look proper? It's all set up properly?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody. I hope this is going to be fun for you. I'm going to begin with, I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the research we do and how we gather that data. But then what I really want to go into is to talk to you about whales themselves, the culture of whales, and play some acoustics of whales, because that's really the heart of the work that we're doing along the coast of British Columbia. So with that, I will just show you where we're actually working. So, you know, in that bubble net video that you saw, you might have noticed when that large group of bubble netting humpbacks came up to the surface, that was actually right in front of this station that you see right here. And this station is actually located in the Great Bear Rainforest in northern British Columbia. And as you can see, it's extremely remote. We are actually the only station, which you can see right here on this island. The only way you can get to the island is by marine vessel. And the reason that we built in such a remote area is because this is in core humpback habitat. So we went to where the whales were so we could study them from land, as well as when we have to go out and do a marine vessel survey, they're literally right there. So it's a great place. We do have a second research station now, which is Orca Lab, which we've just became partners with. They're located more towards the Vancouver area, if you're familiar with British Columbia, which is more southern BC. But again, this station is also extremely remote. It is also on an island. You can only get there by boat. It's only 30 minutes from town by boat, which is a little bit closer, but again, completely off grid. Everything is powered with solar, which we're extremely proud of. So we're almost fossil free, not completely, because of course we have to get there by boat and we do marine surveys, but we are getting there. So we're trying to have less of an impact with the research that we're doing on the environment. The species that we focus on are humpback whales, orca, and fin whales. But tonight I will really focus on humpbacks and orca, but just talk very briefly about fin whales as well. I'll just go over very quickly some of the research methods we use. The one that we try to focus on the most are land-based surveys. So from land, from both Fin Island and Orca Lab, we're actually able to gather quite a bit of information. We do daily scans at the same time from each station, even though they're at least about 500 kilometers apart from each other. And through these scans, we're looking at what marine mammals, what whales are in that particular area. But as well, we're also looking at marine vessels, how many vessels are actually on the water and what kind of impact those vessels might have on whales or marine mammals in that particular region. Of course, we do marine surveys. Those are always quite exciting. The marine surveys we only do up along the north coast of British Columbia. And again, the focus is mainly on humpback whales and orca and fin whales. This is actually where we have a lot of fin whale activity. And this just gives you a little bit of a map as to where we are. So the Fin Island station is up in this area, and we're pretty much doing the whole central coast of British Columbia with our marine surveys. And when we're doing a marine survey, we're taking photographs of each whale that we see. We're documenting the behavior. We're documenting who these whales are associating with. So we get a pretty good idea as to their social connections with each other, but also to space, how they're connected to space as well as to each other. And then we also have lately incorporated drones, and drones have been magical for us. They have opened up knowledge gaps that we didn't even know were missing when we started to look at whales from an eagle eye perspective. So we're looking down. Now we're able to see that group composition on the surface. We're able to understand better what type of physical communication these whales are having with each other on the surface. And this is all because of drones. But also with drones, what we're able to do is actually collect blow samples, which gives us all this incredible genetic information about humpback whales and fin whales. We don't do that with orca just because the blow is too small. It would be much too invasive. But with humpbacks and fin whales, the blow that you can see in this picture is sometimes 20, 30 feet high. So you can actually go in and fly the drone through, and you can get all kinds of information, not just about genetics. You can look at stress hormones. You can find out if they're male or female, which is something that's quite hard to determine just by looking at a whale when you're looking at humpbacks and fin whales. And we can also look at their body condition. We can see if they're healthy, if they're not healthy. We can look for whether or not a whale had ever been, hit by a vessel, which is highly unfortunate, but we do detect it. And as well, if by chance any of these whales have ever been entangled in a net. So drones are just a piece of magic for us. We're just thrilled. And as well, from that drone footage that you saw of the humpbacks that were bubble net feeding, it's giving us great insight into that particular foraging technique.
Janie, I have to ask a question about that because when you say the blows, that's whenever they come up and they take a breath, right? So they exhale.
That's
So
right.
my question, what does whale breath smell like?
Really bad. No, it really does. It smells very like it smells like rotten fish, to be really honest.
That's
Yeah.
appropriate.
And you can smell it from a long ways away. And we actually sometimes have our dogs on the boat. And sometimes when we're doing a survey, we just stop the boat and we just watch them and they're just scanning back and forth. And all of a sudden their nose goes up. And if we look in that direction, we will most likely see a whale and a blow. Because if we're
Yeah.
downwind, yeah, that blow gets your attention pretty quick.
Oh, that's really cool. They have so you have like a olfactory detection device in your dogs.
That's right. That's right. That's a good
That's
way
really
to say
neat.
it.
No, and you can tell the gender by I guess their DNA that
The
comes out.
DNA. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah. So with, I mean,
that's
which I
really
can go
cool.
into, but with humpback whales, we just can't tell the gender unless
Right.
we get a blow sample or the whale shows up with a calf, then we know.
Huh.
Yeah. So it's
Oh
great.
wow, that's wild.
Yeah. I think so too. Um, the other thing that we've been doing, which is this is really true to my heart, to be really honest, is putting hydrophones in the water. So a hydrophone is an underwater microphone, and what it does is it allows us to listen to whales in their marine environment. And what we've recognized now is that even with all these other survey methods that we've been using, if you really want to understand the lives of whales and the culture of whales, you have to listen to whales because that's when everything is really happening. They live in a world of sound. Sound means absolutely everything to these whales, and they have to be able to hear in order to survive. And this is something we've also recognized now that we have these hydrophones in the water. And I'll just using this picture just describe to you what a hydrophone station actually is. So you can see down here, right here where my mouse is going around, this is the actual hydrophone. And it's usually down anywhere from 60 to 80 feet. And we go down with divers and we secure it on a fairly flat or a little bit of a slope, like as you can see in this particular picture. And then this hydrophone is actually connected by a cable. There's a cable that runs from the hydrophone all the way up through the intertidal zone. And then it goes to a land-based powering station. You can see this right here. So this is actually a set of solar panels. This is actually a battery box. And all of this equipment is then powering the hydrophone. So we can actually listen underwater 24 hours of the day, every day of the year. And as we go into this presentation, and I start to play some of these calls, you'll better understand why this technology is just essential to understanding the lives of whales. And then you can see up here, there's a transmitter. And so what that transmitter is doing is it's transmitting all the sounds from the ocean to a lab station. So if I go to the next slide here, you can see here's an actual underwater picture of what a hydrophone looks like. And this hydrophone from under the water, 60 to 80 feet, is transmitting back to this lab right here. This is actually Orca Lab. And at Orca Lab and at the Finn Island Research Station, we are listening 24/7 to the underwater world of whales. We're recording everything that we hear. So we're actually listening and living with these whales in an acoustic way and having no impact on the lives of whales while we're trying to better understand their use of communication, as well as looking at their habitat use.
So is there someone always listening? Do you guys just like always have it piped in through speakers in the houses?
That's right. We actually have it in both lab situations 24/7. There's always somebody there. And we even have speakers outside. So if you're walking somewhere close by, because we're off grid, we have a lot of we have a lot of students and interns that are staying with us throughout the summer months, not in the
Mhm.
winter, because they're sleeping in tents, right? So
Ah.
we have speakers by their tent. So you can't get away from it. These speakers are everywhere. They're in a little camp kitchen that we've set up for the interns. Yeah, 24/7, you're always listening to the underwater world and hopefully to whales most of that time.
That's amazing. That's such a cool way to do research to like completely immerse yourself into it, right?
You are completely immersed. And I'm not actually at the lab right now. I'm actually at home, and I don't have a speaker at the moment. And I feel like something's missing all the time because that sound is not actually here. But I'll get into that because we can actually change that. But I'll talk about that near the
That's
end
cool.
of the
All
of the
right.
presentation. Basically, what's happening is we've gone live, and you can actually, anybody around the world can go in and listen to these hydrophones now. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Okay.
so that's pretty exciting,
We'll have to
actually.
check that out. I was listening
That's
to one of the
great.
calls this morning with my 7-year-old. So
Yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely.
yeah. All right, cool.
So the next phase of this hydrophone project was to reach out to a lot of different First Nation communities that live along the coast of BC, as well as other NGOs or nonprofit organizations or conservation organizations that are also interested in monitoring in their particular locations or territory. So now what we've done is we've actually installed 18 of these hydrophone stations all the way from the north coast. So this is up where the Thin Island station is, to the central coast, down to where Orca Lab is, and all the way down to Vancouver. We have hydrophones set up throughout this entire region. And what that means is that we can listen to different habitats 24/7 every day of the year. And we can compare areas in regards to the amount of, let's say, anthropogenic or ocean noise coming from marine vessels. We can compare whale behavior in areas that are quite quiet in comparison to areas that are actually quite noisy because of large shipping traffic. It also is a great way for us to now determine habitat use of humpbacks, orca, and fin whales along the entire coast of BC without even leaving our home. Just by listening and recording, we now know where these whales are where they're traveling and areas that are of great importance to them just by listening. So we're pretty excited about this project. And this project is referred to as Whale Sound for obvious reasons. It's about whales and it's about sound. But it's also a lot of different organizations cooperating and working together to make this project possible. So, and NCCS or BC Whales is running this project or managing the project. So we're pretty happy about it. Yeah, that's pretty nice. All right. So now it's time to start talking about whales and listening to whales. So as I mentioned, the focus will be humpbacks and orca, but we will listen to a little bit of fin whale vocalizations as well. But one of the things we've recognized by listening to whales is communication is everything to them. Sound is everything to a whale. So just like we're using our eyes right now, we're watching the screen and everything that we do, our eyesight is quite important to us. Sound is as important to a whale as eyesight is to us. That's how important it is. This is how they develop bonds with each other. This is how they find their food. This is how they navigate. This is how they understand their environment, is by listening and by communicating. So I'll start with the orca. In this particular region, we actually have 3 different what we call ecotypes. We have resident orca, we have offshore orca, and we have bigs, or the common name transient orca. Each one of these populations has a very different culture. They have a very different diet, and acoustically, they are extremely different. And I'm going to focus mainly on residents and transients because offshores are offshore. We don't see them very often. So I'll focus more on the residents and the transients. So as I said before, they're very, very different. The residents, which is the picture to your right or my right, they only feed on salmon. They only feed on salmon. They have an extremely strong, tight family bond where the sons and the daughters actually never leave mom. And when you go over to the bigs or the transients, they are very, very different. They are the wolves of the seas. These are the whales that are going after other marine mammals like seals and dolphins and porpoises. So their diet is very, very different. And acoustically, they're very, very different. And their family structure is a bit more fluid. In other words, they don't necessarily stay together, or they're not as tightly bonded as the residents are. In a resident population, so the resident population, the northern resident population of British Columbia, it consists of roughly around 270 to 280 individuals. And this entire population is actually broken up into 3 clans. Each one of these clans actually has their own language, and that language has been passed on to every member of that clan by the oldest female. These clans are then broken up into pods, and a pod is a group of families within that clan. This group of the number of pods, they'll actually share a couple of common calls. And the calls that they share, when you listen to it, it sounds like the same call, but it's got a bit of an accent or a dialect to it. So it'd be similar to me speaking English, but someone else speaking English with a French accent or a German accent. So just by listening to these whales, we know right away which clan it is. We actually know which pod it is. And within a pod, you might have one or two matrilines or families. And these families, every one of these families has one little call that only that family will do. So again, just by listening, we know who that family is, who that pod is, or who the clan is. And that's pretty remarkable when you're doing research, to be able to determine down to that type of number, because now you actually know how many whales you have present. So it's pretty interesting. Oh, sorry, you want to ask me something?
No, I was just saying that's amazing that you know all that about.
I know.
About
And again, it's thanks to these hydrophones. Like once we started listening, we really began. Well, of course, we were listening, and then we realized every time we saw certain whales, we only heard certain calls. So it took a long time for everybody working together to put all the pieces together. But once the pieces came into play, and we also
and so all of that, the result of that, you knowing about different different languages and different cultures of these whales, is just from you listening over time and comparing A to B. There's no like secret algorithm or AI listening to any of these, right?
No, I mean there is now.
Yeah.
But no, back when, no, it was just us listening.
That's amazing. Yeah.
It is amazing. And again, emphasizing that, with this resident population, the sons and the daughters don't leave mom, right? So in a family, you'll end up with sometimes a great-great-grandmother, a grandmother, and a mother, and all of her offspring. And that dialect or that language is being passed on from the oldest female down to her daughter, and then to her daughter, and all of her offspring, and so on. So it's pretty unique in the whole animal kingdom to see something like this occur.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, well, let's listen to some of this. So I'm hoping that it's going to be loud enough. I'm just going to play three different selections of recordings. And in some of these recordings, you might hear it with your ear. You might have two different clans or two different families vocalizing at the same time. I know for the first time it's hard to actually hear it, but I'm sure you'll hear that some things are a little bit different than others. All right, I'm gonna do another one. Now with this one, you're going to hear like this pinging. It literally is a ping, ping, and that's one clan. And then at the same time, you're gonna hear in the background these more like woo sounds. That's a totally different clan. But it was two clans that were actually traveling together this one evening. It was actually about 2:30 in the morning that this happened. And it's one of my favorite recordings, actually. I'll do one more just quickly here. think that whale was literally kissing the hydrophone. And you might have,
That's amazing. It's
I
so
know
cool.
it was very cool. And you heard that tick, tick, tick sound? I should have mentioned that before. That's actually echolocation. So all orcas or killer whales actually use echolocation when they're trying to find fish. And they're literally echolocating. So it's like a sonar. It's coming out and the information is coming back to them. So I'm going to move on to talk about transients just for a few minutes because acoustically they're very, very different. So transients, again, are the marine mammal hunters. They're the wolves of the sea. They're going after seals and sea lions, and sometimes they even go after other whales. So they really are the hunters. Now, because they're in hunting mode and because they're going after marine mammals, they generally travel in silence. When we hear them, when they are actually vocal on the hydrophones, it usually means they've just made a kill. In other words, they tend to vocalize while they're having dinner, lunch, or breakfast. And because they travel in silence fairly often, this opportunity for this dialect to be passed on has not occurred. So when we listen to bigs or transients, we don't have this clan, pod, matrilineal system. To our ears, they all pretty much sound the same. Now, to a transient, they would sound a little bit different to each other. And we now recognize there are slight differences, but nothing like what we experience with the residents because this opportunity is just not there because they generally travel in silence. And I'll just play you an example of what they sound like. They sound actually quite very different than the residents. It's actually quite mellow and soft.
Is that one individual?
It's actually two or three.
It sounds like they're far away too.
Yeah, they are. And that's another thing is that quite often when they vocalize, they don't shout it out. Like residents, they just shout it out. They don't care if anyone knows they're there. The fish don't seem to, it doesn't make a difference with the fish, which is what they're foraging on. But the transients, they don't want everyone to know they're there, right?
It's really amazing to yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of always knew that whales have language and calls and these kind of things, but like it's just truly amazing to think about another species on this planet, right? That does what we do too, right? Some of the biggest brains on this planet, right, are doing similar things to what we're doing, passing language and having family groups and talking during dinner,
Well, no, it's
Um,
very true. Yeah, it is. And because they're so dependent on sound, sound is everything to them. It does make sense that language would mean a lot. Communication would mean a lot to a
yeah.
whale.
Have you ever played their own sounds back to them to see what happens?
Yeah, I didn't do
They
it
turn around
myself.
and be like, what was that?
A colleague did it to some resident orcas, and they did not like it. They actually
Oh yeah.
mock-charged the boat. It's like they
Oh,
could hear it, and they knew, but they knew it wasn't them, but it sounded
it
like
was
that.
wrong.
All that we can think is that they knew it was them, it sounded like them, but they didn't like it.
Yeah.
I think they were maybe a bit confused by it,
Yeah.
but you could tell there was anger. Like they just went to the boat, they were tail slapping, yeah, never did it
Wow.
again.
Yeah. Better just to observe.
Yeah, I mean, somebody was going to try it though, for sure, but it
Right.
didn't go over very well.
Yeah.
So fin whales, they've recently just come back to the coast of BC. They were hunted quite severely, and they started to come back in around 2006. So now we have quite a strong resident population of fin whales along the north coast of BC. They're the second largest whale on the planet, up to 70 feet long, so almost as large as a blue whale. And they're a very large baleen whale, so they don't have teeth. They have the baleen instead of the teeth. And because of their size, when they vocalize, it's a very low frequency call. So we actually can't hear it with our ears, but we use a spectrogram and software that speeds the call up so we're able to hear it. And that's what I'm going to play for you is actually a fin whale call, but it's been sped up a bit. But just also to make a note, because it's such a low frequency call, that call can travel like 1,000 miles across the ocean if there's nothing to obstruct it. It will go on forever because it's almost a straight line. So it's pretty interesting. This, sorry, excuse me. It might be hard to hear this because it's more of a pulse than a call, but I'll play it and hopefully you're able to hear it. And this is a spectrogram down below, so this is how we know that they're vocal. We actually have to use a spectrogram to know that they're in the area, because we can see the call, but we can't hear it, which is quite interesting.
That's cool. It's keeping time, right? It's like
It is keeping time, and it really is a pulse. But when you start looking at the pulses, there's actually rhythms to the pulses. There's just different frequencies that they will do these pulses at. One frequency lets us know it's actually a foraging type call. Another frequency is more of a social type call. So I mean, that's all, and that's I mean, really, there's so much. We're just really diving into trying to better understand the communication between fin whales. But it's pretty interesting, especially when you start to connect the social behavior you see using the drones with their surface behavior of fin whales when they're vocalizing. So it's helping us put that picture together a little bit.
We had just a question about that coming from the audience, about their behavior and their calls. Do they change when they're around boats and drones and things like that? Do they vocalize differently?
We haven't been able to put a connection between different vocalizations with the drone so far. There doesn't seem to be an impact, but vessel noise definitely has an impact. Yeah. So when we are using the drone, we stay quite a ways away from them. Sometimes we're even able to do the drone from land. The drone, if we're up at a certain height, doesn't seem to have an impact at all, depending on the behavior. Like I would never put a drone over a sleeping whale. That would probably have an impact. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, humpback whales. I'm gonna have to start talking a little faster here too. I just realized.
Okay, we have about 12 minutes, and then we'll do some
Oh,
Q&A.
we're good. All right, no, we're good then. So humpback whales. Humpback whales, when it comes to acoustics, they are probably the most diverse adaptive whale that we know of. They're just constantly taking calls. They have core calls that they use, but they're constantly changing these calls. They're just doing so much with vocalizations, we can't keep up with them. And they're very, very different than other whales in the sense that, for example, they're a migratory species, right? So they're not, the orca that we were talking about, they generally stay along the coast of BC throughout the season from all year round. They're not necessarily migrating. They might go down towards the States, but for the most part, they're very resident to particular regions along the coast of BC. Humpback whales, like right now, they've all just left the coast of BC. They've all gone towards the Baja, Mexico, and Hawaii. And that's where they're giving birth, and they're doing a lot of mating when they're in the more warmer waters. They actually come back to the coast of BC starting in April or May, and they're coming to the coast of BC to feed. That is their main purpose when they first arrive. They're actually not feeding in the warmer waters of the tropics. So they are a species that migrates. But another huge difference is that they don't stay in these family groups. They literally, a calf stays with his or her mother for 1 year. That's it. So mom has 1 year to teach this calf everything that it needs to know in order to survive. So that includes, how to migrate, how to feed, where to feed, what to feed on, communication, social skills, all of this. Mom has 1 year to teach that little calf everything. And so when we see mothers and calves, we truly try to give them distance because there's a lot of learning going on. But as well, we're very cognizant of the idea that this is a very sacred relationship. That calf will not leave its mom's side. Like it is beside mom for that entire year. And it's it's just an incredible bond to witness, but it's just so shocking then to see them next year and they're nothing to do with each other. But that's just the way that it works with humpback whales. Very, very different than orca. In our particular region, as you noticed, we have a variety of foraging techniques. And one of them, of course, is the bubble net feeding, which is quite a vocal event. They have other ways of foraging. They do lunge feed. Sometimes they feed at depth. But those two, the lunge feeding and the feeding at depth, they're extremely quiet. It's only when they're bubble net feeding that they're extremely vocal. And I'll just describe it a little bit to you. I know you saw what happened on the surface, and I know that during the video there was a bit of a description. But literally what's happening is a group of humpback whales, anywhere from 2 up to 15, will dive down below a school of herring. And when they get below the school of herring, a number of individuals will start to blow bubbles. And these bubble blowers will then start to actually make a bubble net. So they're actually swimming in a circle. And as they're swimming in a circle, these bubbles are then they're making a bubble net. And what bubbles do, of course, is they go up towards the surface. And as these bubbles are moving towards the surface and moving the herring towards the surface, the humpbacks are coming towards the surface. There'll be 1 or 2 callers, and these callers do what we call a bubble net feeding call. It's a very specific call type. They only do this call when they're bubble net feeding. So we actually know through the hydrophones where they're net feeding, how often they're bubble net feeding in different regions along the coast. And for whatever reason, they only are bubble netting mainly near the north coast and central coast. They're not bubble netting along the south coast of BC, and we don't know why. But we do believe that this type of feeding strategy is being passed on culturally, and that over time, we're actually going to see this behavior from the north, central, and south coast of BC. And I think that because we have these hydrophones set up along the entire coast, we're now able to document that properly. And with the next slide, which you can see here, these whales have just come to the surface. I'm going to play a bubble net feeding call, but you will note in the corner here, this is actually a spectrogram in real time. So this was actually done at the lab, because whenever we hear calls, we're also listening to calls at the same time. So this is a bubble net feeding call. And they just came to the surface. But you can see here in the far left part of the screen here, this spectrogram, you can see the what sound can actually look like. And I just think it's an interesting thing to be able to see something like that. And this bubble net feeding call that you just heard I'd say from June until the end of September, we hear this call sometimes 8 hours a day. That's how much they bubble net feed.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It kind of sounded like, I don't know, I'm interpreting now, like, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. No, wait. He got a little irritated in the middle of it. It's like, no. All right, okay, you're good now.
I know, and it's interesting because that call it used to be quite complicated, and now they've really shortened it, and it's almost like they specialized with it.
That's
And this
cool.
is just a quick, I know just to show you from a drone's perspective of what it looks like, because I think it's incredible when you see these massive mouths just coming up and gulping like a lot of fish, right? And then what they do is as they close their mouths there, what's happening is, of course, they have to get all that water out and the fish in. So as they're closing that mouth, they have quite a massive tongue, and the tongue is going to push all of the water out through their baleen, and the baleen keeps all the fish in. So it's a really effective way of feeding. And just as I noted before, back in 2004, we had like 18 humpbacks bubble net feeding, and now we've got well over 200 that are bubble net feeding, meaning that this behavior and this acoustic technique is actually being passed on from different individuals within the same population. So now this is, oops, I'm just going to go back a slide here. So bubble net feeding is great. It's a cooperative feeding call. Everything is wonderful. But as we get close to fall, this cooperation that we see between humpbacks starts to disintegrate a little bit, especially between males, because now males are starting to posture a little bit. And also what starts to happen is all of these different types of social calls are now heard over the hydrophones that we don't hear during spring and summer. During spring and summer, it's mainly the bubble net feeding call, but as we get into fall, all these social calls are happening, especially at night. And then the males actually start to sing these long, beautiful songs. So what I want to do to begin with, though, is just play a couple of these social calls, and then I'm going to play the humpback song, which is pretty incredible. So I'll just play a couple of these. They're very different from each other. That one there, we hear more often than anything. It's like whoop, just all the time. We don't know. It's a huge, there's some huge communication going on every time they do that. And one more. So those are all single social calls that we hear. And then this is actually what a humpback song would look like. And a humpback song actually can last anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, but it has formation to it. They are actually composing a song. So just like what we think of as song, there's a theme and there's a phrase. And so there's a number of phrases that make up a theme. And when you're listening to a song, they'll go through each one of these phrases or themes. And then when they're done, they'll go back to the beginning and actually repeat it. But as they're repeating it, they'll make a little change to it. And then they'll make another little change. And they do this year after year. But the most fascinating thing is that as these changes are occurring from year to year with this humpback whale song, and it's only the males that have ever been documented to sing it, every male within the Pacific population somehow or other is picking up this change and adding that change to his song. And we don't know how that's happening. And that's a big study that we're working on right now, is how are they communicating that this is the song of the year and that it's changing from year to year?
And who decides to change it, right?
And who's deciding the changes? So because we have these hydrophones from the north to the south coast, we're hoping to be able to find out that answer, because it's happening here. And then from here, they've now traveled to Hawaii, where they continue to sing, right? So the song is changing here, and it's also changing in Hawaii. So it's a pretty big question that we're trying to answer. And I'm going to go to this slide here. And what I want to do is I'm just going to play you a song from 2 years ago and from a year ago. And you're going to probably, even though it's the first time you've heard it, the difference is incredible from a couple of years, how much they've changed this song. So I'll start with this one. So that goes on for about 20 minutes. And this whale is going to go from one verse to another verse to another verse. And it'll change from verse to verse. But of course, I can't play it for 20 minutes. But if anybody's interested, I can send all these acoustics to you. And this is one of my favorite songs. This happened a couple of years ago as well, and very, very different than from the one you just heard. But similar. Has a totally different feel to it, though, eh?
It's, I mean, it's, I guess I've never listened to whale songs and like purposefully like listened for their like timbre and like it's cool. I mean, you can tap your foot to it. That's about like what 60 beats a minute, right? Like they're counting, right? They're doing math while singing. You know, it's like it's cool.
Well, there's actually timing to it, and when you hear
Yeah.
two humpbacks singing together, what you also sense is emotion, because one, they're singing the same, but one will do a little bit something different, but it feels like there's something there that's
Mhm.
beyond what I think we first expected, right? They're
Right.
really putting a part of themselves into each one of these songs that they're singing. All right, I'm gonna go. I know I'm almost. I've got 2 slides to go.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Because we have some questions rolling in.
Okay, great. Well, I've got literally 2 and then we're done. Um, I mean, I don't like to end the presentation with boat noise, but I think it's important for people to understand what marine vessels sound like. And this is a recording of actually orca that are vocalizing and this vessel that went by very, very close. And I just want to play that because I think it's important to understand what underwater noise sounds like and the impact it can have on whales. Comes the boat. So you can
Yeah.
understand when whales are trying to
Rounds them out quite a
communicate.
bit.
Yeah, it really masks their ability to communicate. So worldwide right now, there's actually a quiet ocean initiative that we refer to it as. And it really is organizations working around the world to try and work on how can we make an ocean quiet again for whales, but not just whales, but all other marine species, because we now recognize noise is pollution. It is a form of pollution within the marine habitat. And there are ways to design props, for example, so they don't cause as much underwater noise, but also bringing awareness to people when they're out on their own boats, the impact that they're having to stay at a distance when they're close to whales and to understand how important sound is to the marine environment. And that's where I get to say thank you. Thank you, Lance, and thank you, Save Our Seas
You.
Foundation, because they have literally been supporting our work for over a decade, which is pretty incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's special thanks to the Save Our Seas. They make this possible to so you to come tell us all about your wonderful research and everything. So yes, thank you very much. Is the whalesound.ca, is that where people can go to hear the live whales?
That's right. So if you go to bcwhales.org, that's our website. And then
Okay.
whalesound.ca, there's actually a page that's called Listen Live, and you
Okay.
can listen live. Now, I will tell you that unfortunately, at this time of year, things are getting a bit quiet. So please go in and try it again. Like just bookmark it, and you can always contact me. I can tell you the best times to go in and listen. There's still some humpback activity at night, but it's more when we get into July and August where things will really pick up again.
Is there a place where we could hear a playlist, or someone asked about you used to be able to buy CDs, or you can listen to a Spotify playlist of whale sounds. Do you have a favorite that we should listen to?
You
If
know
you
what,
want to listen
we're
to it as
actually
we fall asleep at night.
absolutely. I mean, we actually put one together. So just send me an email. It's janie@bcwales.org, or Lance, maybe if somebody gets a hold of you,
Yeah.
then I can send something to you for sure.
Okay, great. That'd be awesome to have a curated from you whale songs. That'd be nice. Thank you. Well, so those of you that are tuning in, and for those of you that will be on YouTube, that feel free to reach out. Go to bcwales.org, whalesound.ca, and see what they'll have to offer. We have a few questions coming in, if you want in mind. We had a few questions about you and like how you got involved into what you're doing. You've been doing this for a little bit.
Yeah.
You have a lot of experience in it, and that's what, it's great to have that with research. But if someone wanted to follow in your shoes, if so we have someone younger trying to figure out what they want to do in life, or someone older that wants to change,
Yeah.
what's some advice you might give them? How did you get involved into doing what you're doing?
Well, it's interesting because I was really young. I was probably 9 years old, and I heard the recording of a humpback whale song. And it was in the days where we had tape recorders. I had this little red tape recorder, and I just walked around and I played it for everybody, drove everybody crazy with it. And I think it's actually interesting. As life does, I became a teenager, and then into my early 20s, I was on a different path. You know, things went a little, let's say, off path for me for a while. And it
Mm,
wasn't until my mid 20s I got right back on the path.
yeah.
Went back and, got a university degree in my mid 20s and just went for it because it really was what I was supposed to do. But what life can do, it can derail you. So I think it's interesting and really important that at any age, you can take it on as a 9-year-old, a 14-year-old, or a 25-year-old, or even a 35-year-old, right?
Right. Any age, right?
Yeah. Just follow your
Yeah, just
passion.
follow your passion and
Yeah.
do you, right? Yeah,
That's right.
that's
Do
great.
you? I like that. Do you?
Um, is there any question about helping with your research? Is there a way for guests to connect more deeply with what you're doing and to help conserve and help with the research of whales?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, first of all, if you're interested in an internship, or somebody that's interested, we're always open to people coming and actually volunteering at both stations, the Finn Island Station and at Orca Lab. And I think it's a great experience for people of all ages to participate in that. But as well, I think just on a daily basis, I think as long as we're thinking about how can we protect this planet with everything that we do, because everything is connected, and that also helps every species, including whales. If you want to support, you can also sponsor a whale at bcwhales.org. That's always a great way to support our research specifically.
Mhm.
And just connect with us. Just reach out and ask questions. And I think doing this, presenting, is such a great way to reach out to people. Yeah.
Well, we had a few other questions come in about specifically, let's see, someone wanted to know the name orca. The orcas have so many different names, killer whale and orca and this kind of things. But do you know where that name orca originated from?
I do. So orca, it doesn't have the most positive name to it sometimes. I know orcanesis, it's like the demon of the sea or something is what it
Of
came from,
course.
which is not great. But
Well, they
orca
are
is
the
a
wolves, right?
yeah.
As you said,
I
as
like wolves
transient.
of the sea. I think that's
Yeah,
much better.
right.
Killer whale actually came out of that because, of course, orca had been seen killing other whales, so they became a killer whale. But that would have been the transient, and that's
Mhm.
how they got that name.
Gotcha. Oh, that's cool.
Because they were feared at one time. That's why I think
Of
some of them,
course.
yeah, they
Yeah.
were feared at one time. Not anymore.
Some more questions coming in about prior experience. If they wanted to volunteer, that some of them really resonated with your volunteering. You may have some contacting you. Do you need any particular degree to volunteer, or do you need any prior experience? What's the time frame you're looking for volunteers? Give us more details. They're
Okay,
interesting.
absolutely. So first of all, you need to be able to deal with a robust environment. It's off grid, right? So you might be showering every 3 or 4 days. You're staying in a tent. It can get cold. It's wet. It is a temperate rainforest. Those are things we always, it's the first thing we always talk about is, are you an outdoors person? It's very important. You don't have to have a degree, but you have to have a connection in to nature. You have to enjoy being in nature, and you have to have a conservationist type of mind. You want to be able to help. You want to try and help and protect the planet. Those are probably the most important things. In regards to the volunteership program, what you're doing is you're just assisting different people that are working on different research projects. Or if you know a student that actually has a master's or a PhD or a research project they want to work on, we're also open to that depending on the project.
Mhm.
Projects go from May until the end of October. And the best thing is just to reach out.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to get on with people really, really well in remote areas, extremely isolated. You have to learn
Right.
how to not be able to go to the store for weeks on end.
And be okay with listening to whale songs 24/7.
And you have to be 100% ready to focus your whole entire life on whales 24/7.
Yeah, that sounds beautifully
Yeah.
relaxing. Unplug and just
Yeah,
focus on
exactly.
whales,
Unplug.
right? Well, that's great. Well, thank you very, very much. We could sit and talk for probably another hour,
Yeah.
but thank you very much for joining us tonight and sharing your amazing work and your research and your whale songs
Yeah. Thank you.
that you recorded. It's really cool to see such deep research happening, to get such just truly amazing insights about these creatures, and how we fit into them and how we can fit into their lives and hopefully help protect their ecosystems and them along the way. So thank you very much. And I want to say thank you to the Save Our Seas Foundation, of course, for sponsoring tonight and as well as the whole series. We couldn't do it without them. So very, very appreciative of that support. And Janie, yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Lance. Thank you. You're a wonderful
Oh,
host. So thank you. That was
well,
great.
thank you.
Thank you to the Museum of Discovery and Science. Perfect.
I appreciate it. Yeah, come on and visit sometime when
I
it's
will.
winter where you are. It's sunny here, so
That's right. That's right. All right. Great. Thank you.
yes, thank you. And then stay tuned. We are designing and developing the speakers, the lineup for next year for 2024. So we'll get started in the spring of next year with a whole new series, a whole new set of researchers doing amazing work all around the world. So again, thank you guys very, very much for joining tonight. Stay tuned for more to come. Again, thank you, Janie, and thank you, Save Our Seas Foundation. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.